Welcome to the Brett Davis Podcast.
Well, good evening, everybody. This is Brett Davis coming to you from the beautiful Coronado IQ Podcast Studio. Very patriotic place. They had all the flags blowing all over the place was it yesterday, Sarah? Yes. Something about Coronado, when you see those flags, it's just a unique city to come to. But before we get on to this wonderful interview, I'd like to welcome the chairman, Paula Whitsell of the Republican Party of San Diego. That's a great photo of you, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
So you're a busy person.
I sure am. I have lots on my plate, but that's because it's for a good cause.
Well, you have a passion for what you do. And not too long ago, we had you on the radio show at Salem. And a lot of the things you say make a lot of sense. And I think more people are probably listening more now than they did before the election. Would you agree?
Yes, I think with everything that's happened in the last couple of years, people who were not paying attention because they're busy with their daily lives now all of a sudden realize that they do need to start paying attention to who's out there, who they're voting for, because these policies are damaging their everyday lives and they have a negative impact. So they do need to step up and start paying attention, because the policies that are in place right now are really impacting the day-to-day person that's going to work, taking their kids to school, trying to just live their lives.
So we've seen a lot of things happen. At one time, you lived in Brazil.
Yes.
And that was a very communistic type situation, very socialistic, correct?
Yes. They were actually in a military dictatorship, but when they gave back power, then they became very socialist.
When you were living there now, was a politics part of did you have the same faith and belief that you do now, or were you different?
Well, I did have the same policies, but being a foreigner, I didn't express them much because you don't have the freedom of speech there. But at the same time, I was also working and living and having kids and doing my daily life. So I didn't really realize how important it was to become involved. If I ever went back to live now, I would certainly look at it differently than I did it back then. Back then, we were just trying to make ends meet, trying to avoid running up against the government and the dictatorship and their rules and regulations. So, and their system was completely different than what we have here. So a lot of times I would express opinions based on how we grew up here and what, we have freedom of speech and a lot of the other rights and privileges that we have here in the United States that you don't have over there.
So it just basically solidified what you already knew. Communism doesn't work.
That's correct. It does not.
And probably you wanted to come back to the United States probably as soon as you could.
Well, I actually liked living in Brazil, and I would have probably stayed if it hadn't been for the fact that the leftist policies, which we see being implemented here right now, were being implemented in Brazil, and inflation just took off. And when inflation hit 2,000% a year, we gave up and came back because there's no way you can keep up. Everybody else had to deal with it, but I had the option of just packing it up and coming back to the United States because I didn't see an out. It was really difficult to make ends meet. People were scrambling constantly, trying to just pay the day-to-day bills and keep their kids in school and put gas in the car. And so it was a huge struggle for the middle class. And so we gave up and came back.
What is your take on the homeless crisis that's going on in California?
The homeless crisis really is a challenging problem. But at the same time, I think that this is the result of the leftist policies, which enable people to stay on the streets as opposed to helping them. So there's a lot of different solutions out there, but I think it has to involve giving people treatment, giving people a means to be able to truly get off the street. Housing first is never going to work because you're not helping people resolve the issues that landed them on the street in the first place. Either it's mental health or whether it's addiction or whatever the issue is, you have to address those problems before you hand them a condo. I believe that the reason, because of what I saw in Brazil, Brazil has a high degree of corruption. The reason why the Democrats use housing first as a solution is because that's where the money is. That's where the corruption is. When you have a big construction project, a condo in Los Angeles for affordable housing was $500,000. How do you charge $500,000 for a unit? Well, it's because there's payola going on behind the scenes, and that's why you always see big construction projects or big projects going on for these being offered as solutions, because that's where the money is.
Well, I think if I'm not mistaken, I was told recently that a lot of the homeless are former veterans. That a high percentage of veterans are on the streets, which it's very sad if that's true, and I think it is probably true. And if we do have veterans on the streets, there needs to be something to help them because they gave their time and their life to us, and they shouldn't be forgotten about. I mean, I know that a lot of them probably don't want to follow certain rules, but it just seems wrong to me if that's true.
Well, there you go. Now we get back to government health care, because the VA is supposed to be addressing some of these issues. If they have either mental health issues or other things going on, that's what the VA administration is supposed to be there for. And the VA clearly has not been able to address some of the concerns that the VA population has. They suffer. They suffer to get treatment. They suffer to get their needs met. And clearly, government healthcare is not efficient.
Well, you would know that because you've experienced it in Brazil.
Yes, I have.
Firsthand. What do you see happening now? We'll talk about San Diego. What do you see happening in San Diego now that you think has changed in within the last 4 years?
Well, the homeless situation has gotten measurably worse. Before you drive downtown, you would see lean-tos and that sort of thing down by where the Navy facilities were by the bay. There were lean-tos on the fences and that sort of thing, but it's gotten really, really bad, and it's getting worse. The solutions that are being offered are clearly not addressing the issues. And it's funny because you have all this renovation going on downtown with, you started with Horton Plaza, and from there forward, downtown really changed and it became the place to be. Now I hear from people that they're afraid to go downtown because of all the homeless. And it's not just the homeless, it's the crime, it's the filth, it's the needles on the street. And so they don't feel safe walking down the street, and the gas lamp and all that renovation that went on downtown now is being sidetracked because people don't feel safe going down there.
I wish Sarah was on this conversation. She's behind the scenes right now. I would love to have her thoughts on some of this because I think she probably feels the same way we do. People that I hear that visit San Diego, a lot of times are surprised that we have so much homeless. They're very taken back by it. Crime has definitely gone up. But there's a lot of moving components to this thing. I'm sure, we won't even get into the whole homeless situation for mothers and students. We have a school that the Harbor Police is involved with, Perkins Elementary, and I think the percentage what was the percentage of 40% of the student population is living in their cars outside the school around San Diego.
That's sad. That's very sad. And you would think as a society we can do better than that. I think San Diego probably attracts a lot of homeless because of the weather. The weather is something that it's easier to be homeless in San Diego than, say, Chicago, because in the wintertime there you can't survive outside. So that may be a factor in people migrating towards San Diego, but we need to find better solutions, which because it's not just the homeless sitting on the streets that they're suffering. This is not a compassionate solution,
No.
but it's also the community. I mean, the taxpayers, the people who live in San Diego, they are not able to take advantage of the beauty and the benefits that the city offers them because they can't go outside, they can't walk down the street, they can't take advantage of the gas lamp, all the things that have been done to upgrade our city. We can't take advantage of those.
Well, I'd seen in the paper over the weekend that in the Union Tribune, San Diego Union Tribune, that and we talked about this a little bit, that hepatitis A is on the increase.
Yes,
again.
it is.
And we went through that, but 2-3 years ago, and there was a lot of things starting to be shut down, and the homeless were, a lot of them were taken off the streets because at that point it became a health crisis. It seemed like it could end up being another health crisis.
It looks that way. And that just shows you that it's not a healthy thing for these people to be living on the streets. It's exposing themselves to disease and other people as well. So it's just a bad situation all the way around.
It is. So with all these different things going by, one of my favorite presidents was Ronald Reagan, for a lot of reasons. But he believed in smaller government. So in all these situations that are going on, is government too big? Is that why we have so many loose ends? Do we need a smaller government that works more efficiently, or what do you think the answer is?
Well, I think the one example is the VA administration shows that government is not an efficient manager of resources. And when you let people, the community themselves, resolve these issues, many times they'll find a better solution, a cheaper solution, and a more compassionate solution to some of these issues that are impacting not only the victims of some of these things, but also the community itself. So I do think the smaller government ends up being a more efficient solution in terms of resources, but also in terms of rational solutions.
Do you think if we had President Trump in office right now, do you think we'd be seeing the problems at the magnitude that we're seeing right now?
Absolutely not. And the first step to the snowball that was created, that as it rolls down the hill, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, which is our economic situation right now, started on day one when President Biden took office and shut down our independence for fossil fuels and shut down the Keystone Pipeline, shut down all the other exploration of oil and gas here in the United States. We were independent, we were self-sufficient, and all of a sudden now we are depending on countries that hate our guts, such as Venezuela and Saudi Arabia. They could care less what our economic situation is over here, or our unemployment, or our gas prices, and everything else rolled down from there. Because if you don't have sufficient energy, then everything else is impacted. So that was the first thing that started the whole ball rolling. And as time goes by, it's getting worse and worse.
You know, what's interesting is President Trump's policies worked.
Yeah.
But people didn't like his New York personality that sometimes rubbed people the wrong way. And I always thought this way. Now, years back, I'm sure all of us have had jobs where we worked with people that we didn't like so much, their personalities, but we had to work with them. They were just part of the job that we had to do. And I got to tell you, some of those people did great jobs that I remember working with. It's not people that I wanted to ever hang out with after work, but they were based on their merit of their work ethic. You couldn't knock them for that because they performed.
Right.
Why can't we go back to being that way? Why can't we say, well, I may not like this person's personality, but wow, look at where my gas prices were. Look at where our food costs. We didn't run out of food. We didn't have shortages of things. Why can't we go back to being like that? Why is it that we can hate somebody so much that even if their policies work, we would vote against them?
It's irrational. That's the bottom line. You can't argue facts with someone who's being totally irrational. Frankly, it doesn't matter to me one way or the other about President Trump's personality, because I don't have to live with him. I am impacted, though, by the policies he put in place.
Sure.
And, paying gas half the price that I'm paying right now. The supply chain issues have really been serious because you have a car accident now. You have to wait 3 months to get a car part. I blew a tire, and it took me 3 months to get a tire.
Wow.
So, these are all the little things that impact people on a day-to-day basis, which are all the downhill results downstream from all the policies that Biden put in place starting on day one. But every day he came up with something else that he wanted to cancel just because President Trump did it. But I think what's happening now is people are coming to realize, well, they may not necessarily like his personality or he is rough around the edges because he's from New York, but that's how everybody in New York in that neighborhood are. I know several people who grew up there, and that's just the nature of the beast of someone who grows up in that neighborhood. But it doesn't really matter his personality, because first of all, I don't live in Washington, D.C., and I am impacted here in San Diego by the policies that were put in place during the Trump administration.
Well, the policies, there was an old saying, throwing the baby out with the bathwater. The policies worked.
Yes,
and
they did.
We are seeing firsthand. And then I've heard some people say, well, the only reason all this is happening now is because this is what President Trump left to President Biden.
No, President Trump left us with everything intact, functioning, low inflation. Inflation was 1.9 when President Trump left office.
What was mortgage rates?
Mortgage rates were 2.25%. And now if you get a 5%, you think you're really lucky. So, it's one of those things where that's not true. And, but the thing is, truth is not a left-wing value. So telling the truth or dealing with reality is not something they really care about. They'll tell you whatever serves their purpose. The ends justifies the means. So whatever they need to tell you to be able to further their narrative, that's fine, because truth doesn't really matter to them. Facts to us do. And so we deal with facts and reality. And I think President Reagan said it. A recession is when your neighbor is hurting. A depression is when we're hurting.
Right.
Yeah, we're being impacted by that. Yes, exactly.
And I hear it's crazy. His words still live. I mean, I hear daily even some things that he said. He was able to work, and I don't think we'll ever see it in our lifetime, across the aisles. Which was a nonpartisan type situation where they would tear each other up in Congress, but then they would go have dinner or drinks afterwards.
Yes.
And we somehow have lost it. It seems more mean-spirited to me.
Yes, definitely the left is very mean. If they're kind to the mean, they'll be mean to the kind. And that's the situation we have going on now. So it's really difficult to reach across the aisle. And I think the divisiveness is much more marked now than it was, say, 10 years ago.
Who in San Diego politically do you think is doing a phenomenal job? That's a question out of left field. Excuse me, right field.
Yeah. Well, I do think that our two supervisors, Supervisor Jim Desmond.
I like him.
He's a great guy, and he was very outspoken and on point during the lockdowns, keeping everyone informed of what was going on, why things were being done.
Actually, everything he said was correct, wasn't it?
Yeah, that is correct. Everything he said was right on. And then Supervisor Joel Anderson out in East County has a large part of the unincorporated area of East County. And so his concerns, his constituents have other needs. And so he's doing a great job out there for his constituents as well.
Anybody else in mind? What about John McCann?
John McCann here in Chula Vista is doing a fantastic job.
Isn't he doing a great job?
He is. And the fact is he's really outgunned to a certain degree, because he's the lonely Republican on a 4-1 council, and yet he is getting things done, and he's able to bring a lot of his ideas forward. And they just inaugurated last week a homeless project, which is called micro housing. So they're taking people off the streets, giving them a small little a micro house, so it's enough for a cot, for their own belongings. They have a key, so they have someplace to go, so they're not sleeping on the streets. It has community services, so it gives them support and other things. So that's a good first start in getting the homeless off the street and getting them help, because that's the whole issue, is getting them the assistance they need to address their issues, whether it's mental health, whether it's drug addiction, whatever the issues may be, that will put them in an environment where they can now find those services.
I'd like to have him. We had him on right before the election, and we supported him 100%. A lot of shows don't do that, but I knew he was the best person for the job.
And he did. He brought a lot of the different areas of Chula Vista all together. I mean, he's a Republican, and Chula Vista is a 28+ Democrat city. So he managed to win that race, by a long shot. So The
Well, he's
people
been-
of Chula Vista definitely supported him.
Well, I think the people of Chula Vista that have been there long term know that he's the real deal. He's not
Yeah.
somebody that decided to move into the city at the last minute. He's somebody that's entrenched for many, many years. I mean, his family, himself, Missy, who's another phenomenal leader in herself, who probably could run and probably do a very good job at winning. I haven't never told her that, but she has the leadership qualities.
Yep, she does.
And we think the world of the McCanns. They're great people.
Yeah.
What's going on with the supervisor situation where Fletcher used to be?
Well, Fletcher did resign on May 15th. There was some doubt as to whether or not he was going to follow through, but he did. So that seat now will be declared vacant at the next supervisors meeting. And there will be, they've already taken the vote. They took the vote in May, the beginning of May, that if that seat should become vacant, that they will opt for a special election. So that vote has already gone through. So there will be a special election May 15th. And so far, there's 2 Democrats running. Amy Reichart will be running for the Republican Party. We are going to be endorsing her on June 12th at our meeting. And so she will be our candidate. And she is definitely a fireball, very, very energetic and very excited to work for that district. She's really someone who, if she gets elected to that seat, the district will definitely feel her presence because she will fight every inch for the people in her district.
I had a chance to meet her, Sarah and myself, once, and we really like her personality. We like what she had to say. She's a non-BS
Yep,
type.
that is correct.
She kind of cuts to the chase of what she really believes. You don't have to wonder.
Nope.
And we need energy in that position because of all the challenges that are going on.
Yes, and the thing is she's a hard worker. So it's not just the high energy, but it's the fact that she has her feet on the ground. Mm-hmm. She is a hard worker. During the lockdown, she was very instrumental in forcing the schools to be reopened. So she was one of the founders of Reopen San Diego. She also, during the lockdown, when first responders, police and fire, and teachers were being forced to get vaccinated, and they chose not to, and they were set to be terminated. She went to bat for them, and she saved a lot of jobs. She created a movement. People signed on, and it just became impossible for the city to follow through with that. So they ended up canceling those firings. So she saved a lot of jobs, and she just took that on by herself. There was no agenda there. She just decided that this was not the right thing for the city to do, and she helped those people save their jobs. So she's a person like that. She'll fight these battles. She will not back down. And so it definitely is someone that we are looking forward to having her in that seat and on the Board of Supervisors.
So a lot of the people that didn't want to get the vaccination, police officers, firefighters, nurses, not too long ago won a lawsuit, didn't they? Or there was a settlement out of court.
Yeah, because I think more and more that we get to know about that situation, the more it became very clear that people's religious objections and other objections were being ignored, and that there was really no justification, no rational public health justification for forcing those issues. So, yeah, it's definitely.
We're not hearing a lot about that in the news.
Of course not, because it didn't play out to their benefit, right? I mean, there are still places that want to force that, but it's getting less and less popular to force people to take a vaccine that they don't want. And with all the medical data coming out, it's becoming less and less of a popular thing to do because, there are side effects, and people weren't talking about them, but they are now, especially on young people. That's the scary thing.
Well, one thing, we were talking to Dr. Reyes from Chula Vista Elementary School District earlier, the superintendent, and one thing he had mentioned that we hear about the deaths. He didn't go into detail, but he said just a lot of these kids are so depressed.
Yeah.
Because of being locked up and not being able to socialize. And I mean, a lot of them weren't very social anyway, because of, it's just the personality because of the phones. But that really put a whole spin on isolation mentally. And a lot of kids have been affected. I mean, in so many ways that we may not. I don't know how we're going to get them back to normal.
It's difficult because how do you get that time back? One thing, I mean, there's a lot of things you can get back, but time is not one of them. And the kids lost a year and a half. And being isolated at home is not a healthy thing for a kid in general.
No.
And if they're a teenager, even more difficult because it's a difficult time in their lives. And so now you've locked them up in the house. And, research is now showing that that wasn't justified. So parents are definitely up in arms about that and concerned about the impact of these things, the lockdowns on our kids.
How do you think President Trump handled the whole situation with, I mean, in fact, we've been attacked. It was almost like we were being attacked almost like all over again, like when the day of infamy happened in December 7th. December 7th.
It
was almost like we were attacked again, and by some foreign group that really hated the United States and really came after us. But with this being the case, it was with a bug from China.
It was pretty efficient, right? I mean, they didn't have to take out a single gun. They didn't have to do anything. And it spread through the whole world, and everybody in the entire planet locked down, shut down.
Don't you think China should be held responsible for that?
I think so, yes. More and more evidence is coming out that it did come from Wuhan, and they sent people out in the world. I mean, they sent a whole bunch of people to Italy on planes, and so purposely spreading the virus. So I think it was a test, and I think their test showed that their launching of this was very efficient. With a very short period of time, they shut down the whole entire world, with the exception of Sweden.
What about Switzerland?
Switzerland shut down. The only country that did not shut down was Sweden. The kids did not stay home from school. They did not shut down society. They just recommended people to be careful, but everybody made their own decisions.
How did they do?
They did fine.
Well, Florida did pretty well.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at the numbers of California and percentage-wise, California and Florida's rates were a lot lower than they were in California with people that vaccinated, correct?
Right. And they allowed their population to do the monoclonal treatments, monoclonal antibody treatments, which were proven to be very effective. And so they just had a whole different outlook, and they did just as well. They were more careful with their elderly population and the people who were more vulnerable, which was really the right approach. Kids who were not impacted by the virus whatsoever, they were allowed to go back to school in very short order, and so they were not as negatively impacted. So they were able to continue their lives. I went to Florida during that time, and it was like a breath of fresh air going to Florida and being able to go to church. I told the person there, you had to sign up so they knew you were coming, but you could go to church normally. And here they were truncating the mass. So they wouldn't say the whole mass. They just did a portion of it. Well, there in Florida, we went to church, and the whole mass, everything normal, no problem. It was like, oh my gosh, we're in a different country.
What's interesting is, and Sarah and I never saw the logic in this. They never closed down pot shops or liquor stores.
Oh my gosh.
But those were free range, and everybody was going in there. But the churches were closed, and that never made sense to me. And the other thing is Walmart,
Costco,
and I mean, those big stores were open, but the mom and pop type stores were closed, and you have more people in those facilities in a Walmart or a Costco. By the way, I like both stores, so it's just an analogy of thinking how it went down. But it never made sense to have that many people in a store, but you had a smaller store where there's less people, it wouldn't let them in.
Because really the lockdowns had nothing to do with logic and what was sensible with regard to public health. It all had to do with power. They told us all to shut down. They told us to stay in our houses, to not associate with our neighbors or relatives.
Right.
And sheepishly, we all did it. Because the first 2 weeks, we didn't really know what was going on.
We didn't do it.
Well, I didn't either, but they told us to shut down the business, and I shut it down for one day. So why am I doing this? So I went and I said, okay, we're going to open anyway. We closed the front door, put a sign on the front door, go around the back. And then we opened. So there we go. continued on.
And I do think it was a test. How are we doing on time, ma'am?
30 minutes.
Oh, okay. We can still go a little longer then. It's been a good. You have any questions you want to ask? Good. So you've got a big dinner coming up. It's going to be in a couple weeks.
Yep, June 3rd at the San Diego Marquis Marriott downtown. We have Senator James Lankford from Oklahoma coming. We also have a special guest. Steve Hilton is coming.
Steve Hilton, the
Yep.
one that ran before. He ran for, didn't he run for a seat before?
Excuse me.
It's okay.
No, he's with the Revolution on Fox News.
That's
The
where
bald guy?
Okay, yeah.
He's bald like you.
He's probably a nice guy then. Does he wear? I wonder if he wears beanies in the wintertime.
I don't know, but Steve Hilton is coming. He's our mystery guest.
Okay. Well,
But-
you just gave it away.
Yeah, well, he's going to be on the program, so I guess everybody's going to find out. But yeah, we'll have Steve Hilton, but Senator Lankford from Oklahoma, who everybody says is a great speaker. He will be our featured speaker. And then we have a lot of different awards we're going to be giving out. And one of the things we're highlighting at this meeting, at this dinner, is freedom of speech.
Oh, good.
Because every year we honor a group. And the first year I was there, we honored first responders because
Oh, good.
even though they were in the lockdown, we were in the pandemic and that whole thing, they never stopped working. They were out there every day, attending emergency calls, that sort of thing. So we wanted to honor their work and the fact that they were out there helping the population during this time. Last year, we, with all the defund the police, we decided to back the blue.
Back to blue.
Back the blue. So our theme was back the blue. We invited police chiefs from all over San Diego County, and they were all there. And
Oh,
so
good.
we were able to honor them as well.
Chief of Coronado there.
Chief of Coronado, Chief of Chula Vista,
Chief K, Chief Kennedy.
and out in El Cajon, Chief Moulton. So we got Carlsbad chief out there. So we were able to let them know that we back the blue. We honor them. We know their job is not easy,
No.
especially with all the defund the police movement. And we had that riot in La Mesa. And so we wanted to make sure they know that we have their backs. And this year, since the freedom of speech has been under attack, we decided to honor our colleagues here in San Diego that support and defend freedom of the press and freedom of speech. So we have Salem Media coming. You guys are coming from IQ Podcast.
Yeah.
We have OAN, Newsmax, KUSI. We actually have La Prensa, who's a Democrat. But the reason why we decided to invite him is because he has done a phenomenal job of investigative reporting about the corruption going down in Chula Vista, and he supported John McCain. And so we wanted to make sure that it doesn't matter which side of the fence you're on. If you're reporting the truth and you are making use of the freedom of the press, we want to support you and tell you that, we're here to defend your right to tell the truth.
Well, I know that they're doing good work over there. I've heard that recently. I knew the original owner. I never had a problem with him. I always thought he was very fair too. So they had that reputation.
Yeah. So yeah, that's our theme this year, is to support freedom of the press and freedom of speech. So that's why we have all these different media groups coming to so we can let them know that we also have their backs and we support them, and we know that their job is not easy.
I will say that last year we had a great time at your dinner, and it was over at what was it in downtown? It was at the
San Diego Marquis Marriott.
Is that where it was last time?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's the same place.
Yeah.
Is that a Marriott we were in? I thought it was a different hotel.
You're talking about the Lincoln Club dinner? That's a different.
Oh, is that a different? Is that a different dinner?
Yeah.
Oh, we haven't been to this dinner before.
No, you have not. You have not been
This
to
is the first time. I thought it was the same dinner. It's a different dinner.
Yes, this one
Okay.
is for that one was the Lincoln Club. This one is for is the Republican Party, and it is we call it the Lincoln Reagan dinner. We
Okay.
do it every year. It's probably the third largest Republican dinner in all of the United States.
Wow.
Because the party we're in the top 5 in terms of county party organizations.
Well, you do a phenomenal job. I mean, everybody loves you. You're real. You work hard. You do many, many other things besides this, but you're really passionate about your job that you're doing, aren't you?
Yes, because it's one of those things where if we don't step up and do something, we can't complain when it doesn't go our way. And if we don't agree with what's happening out there and the policies that are being put in place, then you have to step up and do something. Everyone to their measure of ability. Some people can't do a whole lot. Well, you do whatever you can up to your ability. I'm able to contribute more time, so I do. And it's one of those things where you start out, can you just do this? So I was writing the newsletter. Well, can you do that? So then you end up doing a lot more. It's not what I imagined 10 years ago, but at the same time, if I'm able to do it, I feel an obligation to do it. I have to give back to my community. I can't turn my back on not doing what I can from my community, for San Diego, for Chula Vista.
On a final note, is there anything you want to say to anybody that's listening? Maybe thinking about joining the party, or maybe they're on the fence.
Well, I think that a lot of people have seen the light that nobody's perfect. The Republican Party is not perfect. We all have our issues, and having a purity test saying, well, you're not conservative enough is not the right solution. We all have to pull the wagon in the same direction to be able to get where we need to go. And I would encourage everyone to participate. One of the reasons why we lost the governor's race when we had the recall with Governor Newsom is because of the number of Republicans that sat at home and did not vote. So that's the margin by which we lost. So again, our vote does count. Every vote counts. And if we're going to fight back, the first step in fighting back is you got to vote. But it also requires that everyone pitch in to the measure of their ability. So if you can just write a check, you write a check. If you can help write mailers, you help write mailers. If you can door knock, you help us door knock. If you can ballot harvest, which means you go and collect from your neighbors the ballots, get them turned in, then that's what you do. Everybody can do a little bit. And if everybody does a little bit, then we can go a long way. And we see that. And that's how we took Chula Vista, we took Escondido, we took Carlsbad, we took Poway, and we took a lot of these local races, and that's how we did it, because we just won't give up, because if we quit, they win.
I appreciate you being on the show. Hopefully you'll have your own show, hopefully in the future, because I think it's needed and I think it's something new and fresh. And I think your message is very important. And it's always an honor and a pleasure to talk with you. And we always learn something new, and you keep us in the loop on things.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for always being so easy to get a hold of and being out there, because I think it makes a difference for people to hear really what's going on.
Well, I appreciate that. And, the thing is we all have to do our part, and I'm doing my part. And I would encourage everyone else also to help us get our people across the finish line so we can change the face of San Diego County. Right?
Well, Chairwoman, I appreciate you being here.
Thank you very much.
And everybody, should be a email. Is there an email, or is there a website underneath there somewhere? My eyes are really bad about wearing my glasses. But I wish everybody a good evening. God bless. And to all my sponsors out there, their names are there too. Thank you for all your support and belief in what we do. And everybody have a good night, and God bless.